So once the Harappan civilization or the mature phase came to an end, once the people started abandoning these places, it was not until after a millennium, that is 1000 years, that again these places or settlements got to be repopulated. And by the time people shifted back to the Indus region, information about Harappan people, whatever artifacts they produced or what kind of culture they followed, all that was now a distant memory. No one actually believed that this kind of civilization existed before. Okay, so whatever artifacts or things that were recovered, it was just dismissed. People did not understand its significance. Okay, so now we'll come into the modern era and how this civilization was rediscovered. Now, the first person we have already said to stumble across the ruins of Harappa was a British soldier named Charles Mason. But obviously, he also could not understand the significance of these great ruins, and he ended up thinking that this was one of the cities built by Alexander the Great. Okay. Next, an important historian or archaeologist to come across the significance of Harappa but actually not understanding its importance was Alexander Cunningham, who also holds the distinction of being the first Director General of Archaeological Survey of India, or you can call it ASI. So, in spite of Cunningham's achievements in trying to piece together the history of India from 6th century BCE, he failed to recognize the importance of the artifact that he was given by another person, an Englishman. Okay, because he was not familiar with that time frame. He did not believe, he did not know the for a fact that an civilization, an urban civilization existed even before the Mahajanpad era. That is why he was unable to place the Harappan seal given to him in a proper time frame. But he did in fact make efforts to publish about this artifact, which generated enough curiosity, so much so that even his successive archaeologists that came, such as John Marshall or Wheeler, they continued excavations at these sites. Next, you have a series of people, especially Indian archaeologists, who continued to carry out excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro on the directives of a new Director General known as John Marshall. So, John Marshall did what is called a lot of revamping in Indian archaeology. He was one of the first professional archaeologists to hold that place in ASI. He had some professional experience in carrying out previous excavations at Greece and Turkey. He also laid a lot of emphasis on preserving the artifacts which were recovered in the museums rather than letting the Britishers take it back to their home country. So a lot of changes a lot of changes John Marshall allowed in ASI, which not only changed ASI as a body but also the face of Indian archaeology for a long time. Okay, so it was through his efforts or through his directives that seals were discovered by Dayaram Sahani in Harappa and Rakhal Das Banerjee in Mohenjo-daro. Okay, and these finding of seals, same seals but at different places, led to the conclusion that all these sites were a part of a single culture. So, with this insight that the seals were a part of a civilization which was much older and belonged to a single culture, led him to announce the discovery of Indus Valley Civilization in 1924. So, as pointed out by S.N. Roy, he very befittingly said in his book that Marshall left India 3000 years older than he had found her. Okay, a very profound statement which tells you about how great this civilization was, and how Marshall was able to actually give it a timeline, placing it right next to the Mesopotamian civilization of that period. But in spite of all his revolutionary work in the field of archaeology, we cannot say that all his methods were modern too. There are some mistakes made by Marshall while carrying out excavation. And what was that mistake? Now Marshall, he tended to carry out excavation along regular horizontal lines within the mound. Okay, what are mounds? Mounds are small hills that contain artifacts. Now artifacts are buried in a way that the lower layer or lower strata represents an earlier culture period, and the upper layer represents a later cultural period. So instead of carrying out excavations layer wise, where each layer represented one strata or one period, or one culture, Marshall tended to carry out excavations just along the horizontal lines, ignoring the strata. So, this led to a loss of information about the artifacts and the culture to which they belong and to the period which this belonged. So, a lot of valuable information was lost forever. The next person that you have as the Director General of ASI was Wheeler, REM Wheeler. Now, when he took over the functioning or as the director, he managed to break free from the traditions that was carried out by his predecessors. He introduced a modern technique which is even used by historians till date, known as following excavations or carrying out excavations according to the stratigraphy of the mound. That is, he made sure that whatever excavations was being carried out, it was being carried out keeping in mind that one strata represents one period or one culture, one phase. So excavations would be carried out according to layer by layer, that is strata by strata. So, since he was a military man, he brought the military precision into the practice of archaeology. So, now we come to the time of Indian independence, and what impact did it have on the these settlements or these excavations that were going on. So, after the partition, the major sites which had already been excavated, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, they went to the territory or territory of Pakistan. But that does not mean that India did not have any sites. In fact, excavations were not carried out in the 1960s and 70s in sites such as Lothal, Rakhigadi, Dholavira. In fact, some of these sites have led to the conclusion that they might have been much more advanced than Harappa or Mohenjo-daro. Okay. So make sure that you make a list of the sites, major sites, not all the tiny ones, but the major sites which are found in Pakistan and which are found in India. So with the passage of time, a lot of interest has been developed in the Harappan excavation and Harappan archaeology. And this international interest is can be confirmed by the fact that a lot of NGOs and international bodies such as UNESCO have been fiercely trying to protect these archaeological marvels. Then there is a recurrent use of scientific techniques, aerial surveys, satellite imaging, drone surveys. So, all these are carrying out to make sure that before the excavations, all the steps that are necessary will be carried out smoothly. The problems of piecing together the past. Now, how do historians or scholars try to reconstruct the Harappan life? We've already said that the Harappan script is not of much use to the scholars or historians. It is rather the material evidence or the archaeological evidence that gives us an insight about the Harappan life. So there are varied material objects. These are pottery, tools, ornaments, household objects, okay, which the Harappans used and which gives us an insight about their life. But see, the organic materials such as cloth, leather, they might not have survived the tropical climate. They have decomposed over the years, so we don't find remains of these things because of the climatic conditions of this region. Then another important way of finding about important things or objects used by Harappans is the findings that we get in hoards. Okay, but these hoards, which are found by archaeologists during excavations, are very rare because these hoarded items were lost. Okay, when the owner of that hoard, they buried it under the ground, so it was lost forever, and then these people dug it out. It is not every day that a person loses important items or it is lost by them, so इसीलिए उसका hoards का findings बहुत ही कम है. So regarding how do historians or archaeologists, they classify whatever artifacts that has been recovered. Okay, the first they do it on the basis of the material with which the item is made. So this material could be both rare or common objects. Second is on the basis of function of this artifact. So this is done on the basis of archaeologists try to draw a parallel with the present day relevance of an artifact. We have already studied the example. We gave the example of a pot. Then the context in which it was found. So if the same pot was found within the household, it meant that it indicate a functional purpose. If that pot was found in a burial site, it indicated a belief in the afterlife. So second thing is the context in which the artifact was found. It gives us some information about the function of the artifact. And finally, it is through indirect evidence that archaeologists try to piece everything together. Since we have not found that cotton cloth as such was worn by the Harappan people because it's an organic material, it might have decomposed over a period of time. So, what do? We try to take information or we try to draw inference from a lot of other sources, such as the statues might have been seen wearing a fine cotton cloth, or the fact that we have something known as spindle wool, which was a proto-charkha used by the Harappan people. So this might indicate that the Harappans used to wear cotton cloth. So once this is done by the archaeologists, they try to put all these artifacts in a time frame. That is, they want to organize it on the basis of culture. And once they have developed a time frame, then they proceed to compare it with other contemporary civilization. So when it comes to trying to reconstruct the religious practices of Harappans, this is where the problems of interpretation becomes very problematic. So what did the early archaeologists do? Whatever objects they thought was unusual or unfamiliar, they categorized it as objects having a ritualistic or religious use. क्योंकि उनको समझ में नहीं आ रहा था कि obviously they are not on the basis of function, they are not on the basis of materials, so कहाँ classify करें? So they gave it a classification of religious significance. So what are some of these figures? They are mentioned in your book, such as the figure of mother goddess. Then you have the statue of priest king, which is still ambiguous in nature, could have been priest, could have been king, could have been both. Then there was religious significance attached to the structures such as Great Bath, which was found in Mohenjo-daro, and the fire altars found in various settlements of Kalibangan and Lothal. Now, modern historians also use to examine seals in order to reconstruct the Harappan beliefs. And what do these seals actually depict? Some of these seals depict actual ritual scenes that might have been taken place during that time. Some indicate nature worship because they have some plant motif in the middle of engraved in the middle of the seal. You have even certain animals depicted in the seal, whether it is the humped bull or something known as unicorn. So these, which is a mythical creature, so these might also indicate ritual worship. But where does the problem arise? When the historians try to reconstruct the religious practices of Harappa on the basis of later traditions or cultures that followed. Okay, they try to draw a parallel with later cultures. So यहाँ problem आ जाता है. Okay, so how can we see that? First thing, first problem that we encounter is in the case of the linga. Okay, the conical stone objects which were found in the Harappan civilization, which can either have functioned as linga, which is also a symbolic representation of Shiv, or it could have simply been a board game. Then another controversial artifact is that of the Proto Shiva seal or the Pashupati seal. Okay, so this person in the seal is sitting in a yogic posture with four animals, that is the rhinoceros, the bull, the elephant, and the tiger surrounding him. He could have been some form of proto Shiva, okay, that is an earlier version of Shiva, or because the information provided does not match with all these conjectures, so this seal might have also depicted a person called shaman. So it was either a shaman or a proto Shiva seal. So what conclusions can we draw from all these excavations that have carried out in the Harappan civilization? We know for a fact that how Harappan economy functioned. Obviously, there was agriculture, which provided the backbone for carrying out craft specialization, trade, and then you had various artifacts such as seals, scripts, and weights, which ensured that the trade was carried out smoothly. Now, we do also have some idea that there might have been some kind of economic differences among the Harappan people too. But what we are not sure about, or what remains speculative even till date, is the function of, all the ritual significance within the Harappan civilization. Okay, we don't know about the Harappan script, the Harappan literacy. We don't know about the gender roles within the Harappan civilization. So all these questions still seek an answer. That is why excavations is an ongoing process, and even historians keep on revisiting these things to know more and more about these questions. So when it comes to